let's take a look at how opposition parties have really stacked up and tried to take on the ruling party as they formed over the years.
In the last GE in 2015, the opposition parties spread themselves out across the island. They managed to avoid three-cornered fights most of the time. The Workers' Party had the greatest firepower. It contested most of the constituencies in the eastern parts of Singapore. The Singaporeans' First Party contested just 2 GRCs. One of them was Tanjong Pagar, where they challenged the PAP for the first time in the constituency's history. Similarly, the Reform Party took on Ang Mo Kio in a direct challenge to Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. The Singapore Democratic Party, Singapore People's Party and National Solidarity Party spread their forces out a little more, while the Singapore Democratic Alliance and People's Power Party concentrated on one constituency each. Since last year, there have been hopes of a grand opposition coalition, but discussions amongst opposition parties made little headway. Even members within a single party occasionally fell out with each other. Some switched allegiance, sometimes more than once, such as Brad Boer and Benjamin Pui. Others left and eventually formed new parties, such as Tan Jee Se, Goh Meng Seng and Lim Tien. Many of these parties have been making their own walks on the ground this year, although the next election has not yet been called. And the newcomers People's Voice and Progress Singapore Party are in the game too. People's Voice leader Lim Tien has been spotted in places from Boon Lay to Pasir Ris, while Progress Singapore Party leader Tan Cheng Bock has crossed the country from Rochor to Woodlands.
If all existing parties contest the next election, there will be a record 11 opposition parties. The current record is 8 opposition parties set in 1984 and 2015. Now that's a contrast with 2006, when only 3 opposition parties contested. Eugene, you know, as we heard in that story just now, there seems to have been very little headway in terms of the discussions between parties to find consensus, to find common ground, as it were, horse trading, if you will. Some have switched allegiance even, others eventually formed new parties. Why is it so difficult, would you say, for opposition parties to find common ground?
I think on the one hand, you have very dominant personalities, right? So if you look at the opposition landscape, it's dominated by personalities such as Dr. Chee Soon Juan, for a long time, Mr. Lau Tia Kiang. And I think that there are opposition people who feel that they may not be able to work with some of these very dominant personalities. And I think there's also the concern about whether they would be able to run, be fielded as a candidate, you know, for a general election. I think there is a sense that many of them do want to be on a party slate, and not only that, they want to be on a party where they think there's a good chance of being elected or winning an NCMP, a non-constituency member of parliament invitation. So that has contributed to this situation where, you know, you have opposition figures, you know, switching allegiances from one election to another, forming new parties, horse trading in terms of avoiding three-cornered fights. That's not really the way to go forward, right? Because as the space gets more crowded, how are you going to, you can't carve out the island any further. And that's going to give an impression that the opposition is rather fragmented. How are they going to form an alternative government, you know, if they can't even have that consensus, you know, on how they want to move the opposition agenda forward.
So how crucial is it going to be then? I mean, in Dr. Tan's press media conference today, he did say that he didn't quite specify on where talks on an alliance are at the moment. He did say he couldn't share details, but that seemed to hint that there was some level of discussion going on. And he also said that they're going to be trying their best to ensure that there aren't any three-cornered fights. How crucial will that be going into the next GE?
John, for me, three-cornered fights actually is low-hanging fruit. I think all the opposition parties know that it is in their best interest not to go into a three-cornered fight. I think the difficulty lies with, you know, how are you going to go about trying to share resources? You know, how are you going to go about trying to have a unified opposition agenda? You know, so yes, there may be different platforms, but is there a common unifying vision, you know, that Singaporeans can say, well, this is what the opposition collectively stands for. So a loose alliance, to me is a very low-hanging fruit, because there will be an alliance of sort, because it is in the best interest not to go into a three-cornered fight. But if the opposition wants to inspire Singaporeans, if they want to make a dent, if they want to come, anywhere close to 1/3 of the elected seats, they have to go beyond just this horse trading of different electoral districts. They need to do a lot more than that.
All right, thanks very much for those perspectives, Eugene. Pleasure to speak with you as always. We've been speaking there with political analyst, Associate Professor Eugene Tan.